And this is one of my favorite views. So we're right now at the Toronto Carpet Factory, which is the name of this office building that we're standing outside of. And this is the favorite view that I have of the Toronto Carpet Factory, and because of the smokestack. And we have several smokestacks around. There's probably 4 or 5 in the neighborhood. So the area was, early roots were the industrial area. So the Toronto Carpet Factory was actually making Toronto carpets, woolen carpets. They did electrical lights in some buildings. They did, basically the buildings were the home of industry, early industry. There was the women's prison called the Mercer Reformatory for Women, but basically it was a prison. And then down at Strawn and Liberty Street, which is now called East Liberty Street, was the men's prison. And it was for hardened men criminals. The prisons provided a labor force for them. But with time, of course, industries did not succeed. The buildings are being reused now for offices, exposed brick, the wooden floors, the very high ceilings. We can reconfigure the space. It's very large-scale space, natural lights, and because of the natural light, a lot more creative. That's the argument, is that we're much more creative in this environment. This particular building was taken over many years ago in the early 90s by York Heritage Properties.
This was an area that was really in decay. Heavy industry had mostly moved out. There were still a couple of plants here. There was Upper Canada Brewing. They were just being sold and they were moving out. There's still the bakery down at the south end, but almost all of the heavy industry had moved out, either overseas or to the burbs. There was a carryover of some people in post-production, and some artists kept some buildings from being demolished by giving a little bit of rent to the landlords. But basically the area was going downhill.
Well, as a painter, you know, light is everything. So the person that I got the place from knew that I was a painter and actually approached me about the space. So when I saw it, and then I heard the price, I was sold. The artists, they caused it. They were noticed. Well, you know, I mean, it's a word of mouth sort of situation that comes about. You know, one person talks to another. I went to a cool party at this cool place, blah blah blah, and then the next thing you know, people are looking at properties, and you know, Royal LePage has all of a sudden got signs all over the place. But yeah, but I don't see too many of those real estate signs around now, and it seems like pretty much everything's been bought up.
When the tech boom hit, and around that area, around that time, a lot of companies became more youth-oriented.
I'm Dan Armstrong, run a company called Beanfield Technologies. We're a small internet service provider. We started in Liberty Village. Well, we originally came to this building in 1996, I believe, and it was almost empty. I actually remember coming to raves in this building when I was very, very young, and it was nothing like it is now. There was tumbleweeds blowing down Liberty Street. You know, there was very few cars in the parking lot. Most of the buildings weren't even renovated yet. And we were looking for a very cheap space to put some equipment in an old brick and beam building that was outside of the city, just so we could deliver internet access. But when York Heritage bought it, they started a program of invisible mending, they call it.
Liberty Village has become a hotspot for what a lot of people are terming the creative class, the creative workers, a lot of people who work in new media. The type of work they do is not specific to where they are, so a lot of cities are trying to attract creative workers to come to the city, and because people have a lot of choice about where they work and where they live, there is a lot of focus on the behalf of cities to build a space that attracts these workers.
My name's Steve Holford. I'm one of the founders of Filemobile.com. We're a user-generated content and media management platform. You know, we had very little money and we were located out in a strip mall in Oakville. Not really the most creatively inspiring place, really hard, if impossible, to get clients from downtown to come out to Burlington, Oakville. Our real estate agent started showing us places here in Liberty Village, and it's such a creative environment down here. A lot of the architecture, all the wood posts and beam was something that really we liked a lot. We chose this place in Liberty Village and moved in here in February of '05. There's a company in the carpet factory, Beanfield Technologies, that has laid fiber in all these old buildings. It's quite inexpensive to get a super high-speed LAN connection in your office.
We don't really compete with Bell and Rogers. I mean, we can run circles around them. Somewhat recently, the statistic was that Liberty Village pumped more bandwidth out onto the internet than all of Italy. Yeah, no, a lot of the reason there's an awful lot of telecom infrastructure here is there's 3 large adult entertainment companies in the area, and they just go through bandwidth like it's going out of style. Wandering
Around Liberty Village at lunch hour and those sort of things, you end up bumping into clients of yours and other people, and it kind of has the feeling of being on a film set. The roastery has pretty much fed our office staff for the last 2.5 years, and just the other day, we walked in there, the place was packed, we had to leave, and as we're walking out the door, someone grabbed us, and to talk about a deal that we were working on with another partner of ours, and you're able to do that here. I think new media people come to Liberty Village just more for the cross-pollination than anything. There's so many, as Bob Eisenberg calls them, collision zones in the neighborhood where people just sort of meet up and have casual conversations and they can exchange ideas.
It's an old economic model based on Porter, and he had the idea of clustering different industry together and sharing these ideas and sharing resources, and it's economically and creatively beneficial. Unfortunately, it's in a way, it's sitting separate from the community, though, that it's situated in, which is Parkdale. So it is zoned for employment. However, it's not so much benefiting the surrounding community, which is very interesting, because that is really a community that could benefit from having more employment opportunities for those who live there. So it's really, in some ways, rich getting richer in a sense.
The artists were the catalyst for the neighborhood and the creativity that's here.
A lot of warehouse spaces were in the neighborhood being used by artists, and we wanted to make sure that artists were still rooted somehow in this community before it started developing into a major business community. When the change was happening with the dot-commers coming in, there was a shifting and a moving of artists out of the community, because, and that's the challenge that Artscape is always trying to work with, because we can't, meet it at its head, so you have to try to navigate it and work with community partners to make things happen a little more smoothly, so that you don't have abrupt change in the displacement of artists happening overnight, which literally was what was happening.
It's kind of changed from a visual arts, performance art kind of thing to more of a actual commercial kind of arts, more product-oriented type stuff.
No company worth its salt moves because a place is groovy. They'll move because it suits their business model and it's groovy. It was a great area for employee recruitment and retention, and it was a great area for technology. And then, as you know, what happens when you start to develop a culture, then that culture attracts other people. You go to Scotia Plaza, and it takes you like 10 minutes by the time you're from the parking garage up to your office. I think Toronto's the 5th or 6th largest office community in North America, and to have this kind of space that far from downtown is just incredible.
Cheap and groovy.